Hello everyone, TLSG here, back again with another daily Marvel Snap video. So today we have a new featured location in Project Pegasus. And yes, I triple checked that I actually read it and didn't just fill in the blanks in my mind like BioFreeze. So Project Pegasus is going to give us +5 energy this turn whenever this location appears. And so as a reminder, featured locations stay in place for 2 days and have an approximate 40% chance of occurring versus a hot location, which is a 60% chance. And so this is going to, whenever this appears in our games, is going to allow for some really big power plays as early as the very first turn of the game. If you are running an infinaut, you can drop infinaut on the very first turn because you'll have 6 energy. Technically, you didn't play any cards on the previous turn, so you meet his card requirements, and you could drop him on the board. So something like a large minion deck is going to be very, very viable. An Electro ramp deck could be very viable with this list. However, that is not what we are going to end up running. What we have in mind is something that we have wanted to run and make for quite some time. It is an Omega Red deck. So ever since we got Mystique and some of the other core cards to run an Exodia type combo, I've wanted to build an Omega Red deck. It's just, I never found a way to make it feel consistent and to draw into the right pieces at the right time. However, with this list, if we have Onslaught in our hand on turn 1 and we draw into Project Pegasus, we can drop Onslaught from turn 1, which will then enable us to be able to drop things like Omega Red, our Iron Man, our Mystique a lot easier, and we can stack those extra ongoing abilities that we need or that will be critical for us in that lane. Now, as a caveat, this deck list still is fairly draw dependent. We do try to solve that a little bit with Crystal, but of course it's not a perfect solution. We also try to help draw into the pieces we need with Magic, but there are going to be some games where you don't draw into all your pieces, but you have a lot of variation where you can try to make different pieces and combos work with this deck list. The biggest hard counter for the list will be an Enchantress. So if somebody runs an Enchantress, that counteracts that entire lane. It would end up being very unfortunate and would basically negate your entire game plan. If that is the case, then it's time to switch up to something like Large Minion or something else that may yet to be uncovered with Project Pegasus. But with Omega Red, we are going to run this deck list. I think as long as you're not running into Enchantresses, then you should have a much easier time getting your combo pieces. And so we made some tweaks to the one that we ran for a little bit on yesterday's live stream and some tweaks to the list that we were running before. We put some more high roll type cards in anticipation of drawing into Project Pegasus, and then if not, we still have the core pieces that we can fall back on. And so running through the deck list really quickly. First up, we have Ant-Man. He's going to be a 1-cost ongoing card that if you have 3 other cards at that location, he'll get +3. So this is going to be a good last resort type of Omega Red enabler. So if you have Ant-Man, Omega Red, and then an Onslaught and a Mystique in a lane, Ant-Man becomes something like 25 power with the 8 triggers from Mystique and Onslaught. He helps you elevate your power level a little bit higher to try to have that 10-point victory. It is absolutely not guaranteed, but it does help in sticky situations where maybe you can't drop your Iron Man, you can't partner your Omega Red in a Warpath lane or a Mojo lane. And then speaking of Mojo, he is going to be another low cost ongoing card that if both players have 4 cards at this location +6 power, this one can get really, really large, something like 56 power if you have the Onslaught and Mystique combo alongside the Mojo here, because his +6 would trigger 4 times and then making him very, very large and a pretty decent enabler for your Omega Red combo. We have Mystique. She's going to copy the ongoing ability of the last card that we played. A very, very versatile card here. She is what makes this deck list possible by pushing our multiplication of our ongoing abilities that additional time, or that additional 2 times, or doubling the ongoing abilities in the lane 1 additional time. She allows for a lot of these kind of nutty high power combo plays. Then we have Mr. Fantastic. He's going to be a kind of backup to your backup. If you have him in a lane and you end up dropping something like an Onslaught and a Mystique in that lane, he will push his ongoing ability, so his +2 power to the left and right lane of him, up to 8 times, which could end up being 16 power in those lanes, which is a pretty decent power push as a kind of like last resort to try and get additional power onto the board. We have Wave. Wave is going to, if we don't draw into Project Pegasus, allow us to potentially drop something like our Onslaught, our Iron Man early so that we can curve into the rest of the cards a little bit easier for our combo. And then we have a card that I'm going to label as a tech slot. I don't think she is going to be very good in this list, but my thinking was we have a lot of people that are running Doc Ox. We have a lot of additional energy, so we may run into a scenario where we run out of cards in our hand. Crystal will be able to at least reload 3 additional cards into our hand if she was the last card we played. Or let's say they use a Doc Ock in the middle location. They pull into all of your cards, one of which is Crystal. She will draw 3 additional cards, and all of a sudden you got a huge upside by playing your cards onto the board and then still having cards in your hand. We have Omega Red. He is going to be the biggest win condition for us. If you're ahead by 10 power in this lane, then you get +4 power to the other locations. So if you have this alongside an Onslaught and a Mystique, then that becomes a 32 power push, I believe, into the other lanes. So it is a huge power push into those lanes. And then if you have, let's say, maybe an Iron Man in one of those lanes, or you have a Warpath, that's going to help elevate that power level even further in those other lanes to make sure that you can win one, if not all, of the locations. And then we have Warpath. A lot of our cards in this deck list are going to be kind of funneled into and focused on 2 lanes. Warpath, if as a last resort, has to be dropped as one of the big power pushes in an Onslaught lane. His +4 power bonus is going to multiply and become a pretty large power push card by himself. And then we have Iron Man, who is going to help elevate our power level and guarantee that we get the at least +10 win with the Omega Red. If we partner this with an Onslaught and a Mystique, then all of a sudden we have something close to a 3000 power lane, and there's just no competing with it besides an Enchantress. We have Magic. Sometimes we are going to need that additional turn to either draw into our key resources or to be able to drop something like an Omega Red and a Mystique on the final turn of the game. Would be on 7 with this deck list. And the most optimal time for us to drop Magic in this list is actually on turn 5. That way we can drop Onslaught on turn 6, and then we can curve into an Omega Red and a Mystique on turn 7. We can play both of them onto the board in that final turn. We have Sarah in this deck list, which is something that we don't normally run, but if we draw into Project Pegasus and we don't have any other great cards, we can drop a Sarah, which is going to allow us to drop and play into our other combo pieces much more easily. So as we draw into Onslaught, we can play Onslaught on turn 5. As we draw into our Magic, we can drop Magic alongside something else on turn 5 or turn 6. The Sarah is going to enable a lot of like high roll style games if we have her in hand when Project Pegasus triggers. If we don't play her early, we will probably not play her in this deck list, but this is more of a, if I don't have the key resources in hand when Project Pegasus comes up, Sarah is a good long-term enabler instead of pushing for that power right now. And then lastly, we have Onslaught, which is one of the key pieces of this combo. He is going to double your ongoing effects at this location. If you copy that with Mystique, it is going to double the double. It will actually push that power level 8 times onto the board, and so you will be able to do some really, really large high power plays with the Onslaught, the Mystique in this deck list. But that is the general rundown of the deck list. I am going to go ahead and jump into a few games. I think this will be pretty fun. I think this location is going to be really fun to mess around with. Oh, and in case you didn't see, we did hit rank infinite. We did run a negative serotonin deck to push from 93 to 100 in about an hour and a half. So negative serotonin is definitely overtuned and needs to be somehow balanced. But we are going to go ahead and jump to a few games. I hope you guys enjoy. Alright, so first up we have Corson, and I do think we're going to play our Ant-Man into one of the unknown locations here, as we wait to see. Okay, so this is actually the first time I'm seeing Project Pegasus. So I've played several games, but I just haven't been able to get lucky enough to see it, but here we are. So I think we're going to go with an Omega Red into the cloning vats, and we can also do Mr. Fantastic into mid to push power left and right, and then next turn, depending on what we draw. Maybe we end up doing the crystal reset. Maybe we end up doing something a little bit different. Ooh, and so then +2 power to all cards in our hands, and we have Onslaught now. So I think we are going to go with Wave into the Project Pegasus lane. On turn 4, we will go ahead and go with an Onslaught. As long as they don't lock down this location with the Professor X, then we should be okay here. But I could very well see them locking this one down with the Professor X. So maybe we pivot. Maybe we pivot away from here because we do have the Onslaught, the Omega Red, the Mystique. Maybe we pivot into Wakandan Embassy, expecting a Professor X here, which will give them another Professor X, unfortunately, but we have a better shot of winning these other lanes. I am going to go ahead and decide to pivot. Ooh, no, they do Death instead. Oh man, that makes our pivot very, very unfortunate call. But we are going to use Mystique here to duplicate the Onslaught, and then for the last card, we will drop our Omega Red. I wish we wouldn't have got that call wrong. Oh man, I really thought it was going to be Professor X there. So they do like double down onto the cloning vats with what I can assume is another Death. No, it's a Bucky Barnes and a Venom. Very, very well. And so then that Venom is going to be what, like 34, 35 power, and it's a 35 power Venom that's still in his hand. Phenomenal. That's huge. So we are going to go with the Omega Red. That will push something like 60 power, potentially push something like 60 power into these lanes if we can win this one by enough. And I know with the quadruple trigger of Ant-Man, he's something like a 25 power card, and so they're going to have to beat 30 power here. I think they probably do it. Unfortunately, I think they probably do, but we are going to go ahead and try it anyways. We're going to try our luck here. So right now, of course, Omega Red. Oh, so it's just a 40 power lane, and so we win it, but we don't win it by... No way. Did we win Project Pegasus by 4 by just having 7 power? Oh, we got very, very lucky. Okay, so we do need to play that just a little bit better. I was very afraid of Professor X there and locking down locations early. Next up, we have Mr. Anderson. And the first card, or the first location, is a Project Pegasus. So we could do our Iron Man. We could drop our Iron Man early, but I think we go long term here. We go with our Sarah. That is going to allow us to drop our cards a little bit earlier or a little bit more consistently. Ooh, and so they use a leader off the bat, which does copy our Sarah, but I think it's better for us than for them. They are probably running a large minion deck. If we can enable something like an Iron Man, an Onslaught, a Mystique, and an Omega Red, then I think we have a really good shot at being able to hold this down. So I am going to go with Mr. Fantastic into the big house. I don't think they're going to be able to play a lot of cards there. I anticipate that they run a lot of high power cards in their deck list to kind of make up for the Project Pegasus lane. That is what we were wanting. We were wanting our Omega Red, and ask and we shall receive. I'm going to go ahead and snap. I feel pretty decent. As long as we can... Oh no, why? So we know that we were going to be able to trigger Omega Red at the very minimum, but if we could draw into Onslaught within the next few turns, then we would have been able to do the quadruple trigger of Omega Red and of Iron Man to have an insane power push. All right, so next up we have Sura. And we do have Ant-Man in our starting can, so we're going to go ahead and play him into the right lane. We will probably play Mojo into mid, depending on what we draw into. Okay, Muir Island will be nice for stacking our cards over time, and it doesn't look like we have one more chance to get Project Pegasus, but it doesn't look like we're gonna... No, it's gonna be Clintar. So in that case, we are going to use a wave here. For turn 4, we will do an Onslaught. We hope that we draw into our Mystique to drop it on 5. Ask and you shall receive. So then we do top deck the 1 in 6. The 1 in 6 Mystique. They use a leader, so they copy our Onslaught, but they're going to be pretty limited in what they can use it for because they don't have a lot of space left. So I am going to go ahead and use Mystique. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and snap. I bet they retreat, but I am going to go ahead and snap. We're going to drop the Mystique, and then if we get the upside of an Omega Red, that's going to be huge. But if we don't, then we can drop our Mr. Fantastic. He's going to push 8 power to the left and right lanes. Ooh, so it is Omega Red. So we can extend the game if we absolutely felt like we needed to. But if they have Enchantress, we absolutely lose. But we don't have Iron Man in this, so there's no way to guarantee that it does get a positive 10. So if they do play a card here, then absolutely we do get to that point. And then if not, then it's just 19. I don't think they play a card there. And so if that's the case, actually maybe we do a magic, because I bet they don't play a card in this location. And so maybe we do a magic here. That way we can kind of see, we can feel it out a little bit. Okay, so they don't. They play 2 cards over into Jotunheim, which pulls into Odin, and then it also pulls into Doctor Doom, which is perfect for us. That is all we needed to guarantee what upside we can get from our Omega Red. And so we are going to go ahead and drop him here this turn. Turns out we would have gotten the lucky upside from their Jubilee there, but it was not guaranteed by any means. And so we did end up playing the path of cautiousness. So let's go ahead and drop our Omega Red. Let's wait for the huge mid lane game here, which is going to be, what, like 71? And then we have 32 and 44 in the left and right lanes. So we do end up with a clean sweep because of the Omega Red, because of the Mojo being able to trigger. He was a 56 power Mojo, a 56, because his +6 triggered 8 times, making him absolutely massive. All right, so next up we have Soykot Soiko. And we do have Ant-Man, we have Wave Mojo, we have our Omega Red. So now we just need to find a way to make the best use out of them. We do drop our Ant-Man into the far right lane. Superflow helps us a little bit. So if we can draw into like our Onslaught, our Mystique would be fantastic. Both would be very, very fantastic. So I am going to go ahead and drop our Wave into Camartage. I think from there we drop our Onslaught probably into the far right lane, depending on what that location turns up to be. And then if we do get the +5, that lets us drop 2 cards next turn, 2 big units onto the board. Ooh, and so they did a Wave as well, so that's a little bit scary. Let's go ahead and let the new location flip. It is Project Pegasus. So we're gonna have 9 energy. We can do our Onslaught and our Omega Red. Do we do it in the Ant-Man lane though? I think we do. So I'm actually going to do Omega Red first and then Onslaught. I'm not sure if this is one of those cards that Onslaught needs to be first, but I do want to try to copy the Onslaught ability with our Mystique. And so I'm giving us 1 additional chance to try to draw into that location. Ooh, and so then they copy our cards with a leader, and so that actually caps them out in Project Pegasus. So we know that as long as we can draw enough power, then we should be absolutely fine here. We're gonna have the entire combo off by turn 4, which is nuts. Mystique is going to copy Onslaught, which is going to give us a like 20-something power Ant-Man. This becomes a 30 power lane. So even if they pass, it becomes hard for them to come up over that power level. And so I think because of that, we will go ahead and play our Mojo. We want to try and compete for these other lanes because they're either going to have to pass on each of the turns to absorb as much energy as possible, or they're going to have to be losing by more than 10 in this location. And so let's let our Omega Red slap some like 30 or 40 power into the left and mid lane. So 30 power. So they're going to have to pass for 14 power here. So that's more than they can do actually. So let's go ahead and do our Iron Man here just to add insult to injury. I think we do our Iron Man into Camartage. I don't think there's a way that they can compete. And I would fully anticipate a retreat here. So Project Pegasus definitely helps us get some of our higher power cards out onto the board a little bit faster. Triggering Omega Red 8 times, it results in like a 32 power push to all of these lanes. Ooh, and so they do get a leader, which then copies our Iron Man into the left location, which pushes them to 30 power. But of course, ours is going to amplify the 30 power that is being pushed by our... Oh, actually. So, my calculations were a little bit wrong. So if they pass here, then we lose that 30 power per lane. They would end up getting, what, 6 additional power here, which puts them at 27, which puts them within 10. So we're actually going to drop our Mr. Fantastic into the middle location to push power into Kamar Taj and push power into Project Pegasus as well. They may potentially do a magic play here to extend the game, but if so, then I think maybe we can still win in this lane, but just based off of our merit. We would just have to fill it the rest of the way, and we're going to win this one regardless. And so we're in a very good spot. They're being a very good sport in sticking this one out. They're trying to find a way to win, I know, but I don't think that they're going to be able to do it. So they do drop the magic, and so then they end up skipping by what, 1 there, and so now they could do, ooh, how'd they get so much power there? They get +4 power on that turn. Like we'll be able to do Warpath here. It's gonna, even without the 30, it's gonna keep us above their 30-point lead, because we would cap this out. Mojo would give us 6, so this would be an 11-point, which turns into a 22-point swing here, even just as is, and then we have 5, which turns into another 10, so it's a 32-point swing, even without the Omega Red bonus. Absolutely nuts. We had that entire combo out on the board by turn 4. And because of the leader play, it did end up capping their lane out, so we could guarantee if we were going to get the upside or not. All right, and so this game is going to be huge, or it can potentially be huge. So the first location is Onslaught Citadel. So if we can get and pull into Onslaught early, we are going to be able to play a massive amount of power into the Onslaught Citadel lane. Project Pegasus would come in huge, and then if not, maybe we can get lucky. But I think we go ahead and play Mojo in the far right, and then we see what they play, see what this last location is. So it's Human Torch, so they are running a movement style deck. Interesting. And so then it's Los Diablos base, so it does have the potential to ruin this location for us. I think I am going to play our Mr. Fantastic. I think I'm going to split them. I'm going to play Mr. Fantastic into Onslaught Citadel. If this one remains and we're able to win it, then maybe we can figure out some upside from it. But by doing at least 1 card early, oh no, it does destroy the Onslaught Citadel. Unfortunate. By doing at least 1 card early on turn 5, we can extend the game with magic, which would allow us to on turn 7 do both a Mystique and an Omega Red. But I do think we're going to go with a wave, maybe a wave and an Ant-Man into Los Diablos base. Most likely they're not going to have much power, if any, in this far right lane at the end of the game, and so they do have a Vulture. I think they probably Heimdall shift at the very end here. So with wave, we are going to go ahead and use our Onslaught into the Ruins, which is going to push additional power into mid, and then we can follow that up with either Omega Red, we can follow it up with potentially, no, oh, and so then they pull into a lot of our cards here. But unfortunately, Onslaught is no longer the last card that we played. I don't think. I think a Mystique would end up copying. Oh my goodness. I think a Mystique would end up copying Iron Man here. We are going to give it a whirl. We're going to see what it pulls into. If it's Iron Man, I guess that's okay. We'll still get a 2 trigger of Omega Red to push this lane or this advantage up here. And then if not, I mean, maybe, okay. Ooh, so it does do the Onslaught. Really? Okay. So the Onslaught is actually a little bit tougher for us there because we have to win by 10. And with the Mr. Fantastic, that pushes a lot of power here. It just doesn't quite get us. It's not going to help us expand the lead. I think we maybe do Omega Red into the Limbo lane. That's going to allow us to push power into Los Diablos base and some further power into the Ruins. Is it great? No, probably not. But I think given what Mystique copied, I really thought it would do the Iron Man since that's the last card that flipped. But of course, we didn't play that card. It got drawn in. So the interaction is the last card that we actually played. And so it took a fair amount of luck there, but Crystal did hold her own when she got pulled in with the Doc Ock play. She ended up taking our empty hand and recycling 3 new cards, which was huge for us. That's what gave us the boon to be able to continue to play and push as much power as we needed to. All right, so next up we have Ice Cobra, and the first location is Project Pegasus. So if they have an infinaut, they can actually play it in here because they didn't technically play anything on the turn before since there was no turn before. So it's kind of interesting that they're able to do that. I think we're going to play our Iron Man into the far right lane. We don't have a Mystique or we don't have an Onslaught that we'd be able to play. Ooh, and so they're running an Agatha deck, but they actually got to play Agatha on turn 1, which is pretty interesting. Ooh, I don't like the Avengers compound here. So we do get lucky in that we are able to extend our power level, but maybe it's not so bad. We can do the magic here on turn Guys, we wanted to be the good guy. We wanted to drop magic on 5. They turned us into the villain that we are about to become. I just want you guys to remember this is them. This isn't us. Oh man. Okay. And so turn 4, we can go ahead and do our Omega Red. Turn 5. Why did we throw the rock over in Project Pegasus? We could have done a warpath or something to push some power into the Avengers compound. Oh, how foolish of us. So we are going to do the Omega Red. They invested their Thor resources here. And so actually, I think we're going to go with Sarah. Sarah was a pretty decent top deck there. Next turn, we will be able to play our magic, even though she has been increased in cost by Iceman. I wanted to do it on 5. That would have been the ideal play, but unfortunately, we were not able to. The perfect top deck here would be our Mystique. What is going on? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and play... I don't know. I'm going to go ahead and play our Ant-Man into Project Pegasus lane. We are going to be able to play the Onslaught and the Mystique both on turn 7 here. So let's go ahead and... do we let it play out? Do we snap? I want to snap. We're very, very confident. Let's go ahead and snap. Maybe they drew into their Thor materials, so maybe they're confident in winning these other 2 lanes. And so maybe we won't scare them off, I hope. So they drop an Iron Man in the far left lane, and then Mjolnir as well as Wasp. And so they get some upside from Washington DC in the Wasp play. So they get 4 power from that one. But before we play our final turn of this game, we did have a user that used the super chat feature in our last live stream, from Tuesday. They used the super chat feature to highlight their message and donate an amount of money towards us to help support me as a content creator. And the user is SillyBoy12, and I did just want to take a second to say thank you so much, SillyBoy12, for the super chat. It is very, very much appreciated. We are going to finish this one off by doing the Onslaught Mystique combo, even if they drop something fantastic. As long as it's not an Enchantress. Enchantress just ruins us, right? If it is an Enchantress, that's very, very unfortunate, and they will get our 8 cubes. Otherwise, we are able to push something like 30 power here, 30 power here, which I do think is going to be enough to win the game for us. Okay, so Captain Marvel, that is not going to do it for them. Their Lady Sif, not going to do it for them. They will win probably the Project Pegasus lane, but we will win the other lanes. We'll win the right and the mid lane by quite a bit. We only lose Project Pegasus by 1 actually, but luckily we win Limbo by 18. So even Captain Marvel moving was not going to be enough for them there. And then in a non-Onslaught Citadel lane, we did end up getting a 2800 power level, which is just nuts. The Project Pegasus allows us to really start enabling this. So what always felt clunky with the Omega combo for me is finding a way to have Omega Red, Iron Man, and your Onslaught and Mystique in the same lane. Because of the way that it curves, it's going to be 4, 5, then if you drop your magic, you're not going to be able to do both Onslaught and Mystique, and it becomes really clunky. So then you have to sub in like an Ant-Man or a Mojo, a Warpath, potentially, which is still on the higher side. But with this, we're able to do it a little bit more consistently, and so it feels much better, and you can really sneak away those 8 cube wins, especially since we had both Onslaught and Mystique in our hand. It was really hard to anticipate, or I guess that we had all of the resources that we needed. With that win out of the way, we are going to go ahead and end the video here. We have been wanting to do an Omega Red deck for a while. This featured location was just the push that we needed to be able to make that happen. I am going to go ahead and end the video here. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to leave it a like and a comment down below. I appreciate hearing all of your feedback, and it helps me continue to push and grow my content to continue to improve and make it better. So I hope that you guys enjoyed the video. This has been TLSG. Later, guys.